Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our interested party engagement session. This session will focus on personal support services under section policy 12, 19, and 96. And before I go any further, I want to make sure everybody can still see my screen share. Okay, perfect. All right, so as I said, our focus today is on activities related to personal support services and codes as well. So on this slide, there's the definition, which specifically falls under the policy section 12, 19, and 96. And the personal support services definition are those covered ADL and IADL services provided by a home health aide, certified nursing assistant, or personal support specialist, which are required by an adult with long-term care needs. Oh, I think there we go. With long-term care needs to achieve greater physical independence in accordance with an authorized plan of care. So just want to kind of review that personal support services definition. As we, again, talk through some of the questions, we'll be thinking about the codes as related to this service. So with that being said, the next slide has the current personal support service codes that we at PCG have identified with the assistance of MaineCare, which are displayed in this slide. There are 5 codes in total for section of policy 12, 19, and 96. And Emma is also, as well as some of the main team, they will be putting on in the chat. You will see different pop-ups, items, whether it may be a link or a screenshot of something as we go through. And one of those things she just put in there is the link to the service codes for this particular project. And you can see all of those. So,
excuse me.
Yes.
I don't see anything. I see it just says can't display the content. Am I doing something wrong?
I don't know if you are doing something wrong. Sometimes it might be the system. So sometimes if you go out, if you leave and come back in, sometimes those things help. I will just say that. And same way if anybody has issues with like hearing us, sometimes that will, for whatever reason, correct it. So try that and see.
All right, thank you.
So for our agenda, during this next 60 minutes, we will quickly review the rate determination process, the project overview, goals, and activities, and then get into those questions and opportunities for discussion and feedback with everybody. So I will introduce the PCG team on the call. Myself, I'm Rhonda Kern-Stralzer. I'm a Senior Advisor of Behavioral Health and the lead for Interested Parties Sessions. Emma Feinstone is on our call. She's a project lead and senior consultant. Jonathan Sourshell, he is on the call as well. He is a senior consultant, and Maddie Wall is a business analyst, and she is on the call from PCG. We also do have some of the MaineCare team on the call today. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Kristen to go ahead and make some introductions for that team.
Thanks, Rhonda. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Merrill. I am a Senior Policy Manager with the Office of MaineCare Services in the Policy Unit, and I am leading this effort from the MaineCare side. I am joined by my policy colleagues, Tom Leet, who is the manager in our policy unit, and Heather Bingalis, who is one of our policy writers. I just really want to thank everybody for joining today. Participation is high, and we really appreciate your feedback. With that, I'll turn it over to Dwayne.
Hello, I'm Dwayne Parsons. I'm the manager of rate setting for the Office of MaineCare Services. I'm joined by my HCBS project manager, Jennifer Morris, and my rate setting coordinator, Amanda Lee. And I'll turn it back over to Rhonda.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Can we also have Derek introduce himself as well?
Sure. Thank you. My name is Derek Fales. I'm with Office of Aging and Disability Services. I oversee sections 18, 20, 21, and 29 for home community services. I know I'm joined by my colleague, Allison Toomey, from long-term services and supports as well.
Doritos.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allison Toomey. I'm the Community Long-Term Services and Supports Manager. I oversee sections 19, 12, 96, as well as our state-funded home-based supports and services programs.
Thank you. Kristen, is there anybody else on the call?
It looks like Nicole just joined, though. I'm not sure if her audio is connected yet. Nicole, if you're able, great. Thank you.
Sorry for being late. I was unable to join at first for some reason. But anyways, my name is Nicole Rudy. I am the program manager for the Office of Aging and Disability Services, Long-Term Services and Supports, overseeing community programs with Allison for 12, 96, and 19, as well as state-funded and other various community-based programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
I think that's it. That's it. You can go ahead and take it back, Rhonda. Thank you.
I am Sad Goni, and I'm providing section 19 in Lewiston, Maine.
I'll wait for a minute to. All right. So next thing we're going to talk about is the rate determination process overview. So again, while this meeting focuses on feedback from participants regarding personal support services, I want to highlight the process from a few slides off the kickoff call that we had back at the end of August. The rate reform process does set schedules for regular rate reviews. Benchmarking creates a transparent process and includes technical advisory and comments. And that's just a highlight here of some of the things on the screen. So the next slide talks about the process for the rate determination itself. So steps for the rate determination process include a kickoff call, which, like I said, was held back in August, and actually August 28th. And that can be found on the rate reform website. And we should have a link coming into the chat. Someone will post that as well. If you need to go back to that, you certainly can. Also, we have public forums for feedback, official written comment period. Right now, that is not open yet, but once it does, we will certainly let everybody know. There will be then a department review and a final rate determination, which should be around April of 2025. So during this process, PCG will hold and conduct interested party sessions, collect data and complete analysis. We'll develop a rate model, draft rates and make presentations for comments, finalize rates and publish them, and make final recommendations for consideration for rule proposal and adoption. So I also want to review a few items from an interested parties engagement standpoint. These meetings that we're having are the first of the kind of general meetings to start gathering information. And we anticipate further meetings in the future, which will have additional focus items as well as a survey to gather additional feedback. In addition, we have an email set up that you are welcome to send information, questions, or comments to, and someone will be putting that in the chat as well, and then we'll show it at the end. So for the project overview, just kind of highlighting some things here. Following the established requirements for this rate reform process, this project focuses on home and community-based services including assistive technology, devices and services, care coordination, clinical services, clinical therapy services, supportive skill building, therapeutic interventions, personal support services, which is today's meeting is specifically focused on. That relates to section policy 12, 19, and 96. And then there's rehabilitation services. So looking at this as a whole, this is the entire project that Public Consulting Group is doing, that we will be looking at rates for this project. I also want to know other projects are occurring simultaneously with other partners in MaineCare during the same time frame, which are reviewing other sections, payments, rates and codes. So if you're not seeing a section listed here, please check with the rate reform website for other projects ongoing. Again, this section meeting will focus on personal support services. However, if you're interested in providing feedback for any of the other sections or services listed, we actually right now are having one more meeting coming up, which is rehabilitation services. However, you can again, go out to the rate reform website. You can send emails to us. You can contact us in different ways if there's additional information. Maybe you were not able to attend one of the previous meetings. You can certainly still provide information as well. And then all of the information for any of the meetings that we've already had that is out there on the rate reform website. That's the kickoff presentation as well as each additional sections meetings that we've held. And you can view those as well. And then one last reminder, if there is something coming for this project, for an example, that where there's another opportunity for meetings or feedback or surveys or something, that will go out through the listserv, and you can see that information. Any of those things coming up, you can see that through the listserv. And then we will also put the remaining rehabilitation services date in the chat as well. So you can see that if you'd like to attend. So for our project goals, kind of have really 4 high level goals. So that's to develop and document appropriate benchmarking, service definitions, rates, and coding alignment, engage closely with interested parties throughout the project lifecycle, demonstrate the impact of changes to rates or service definitions, and ensure alignment to state and federal reimbursement requirements. So here's kind of just a brief overview of our activities of what we've been doing so far since our project kicked off. We have identified codes and rates for each section, and a list can be found on the rate reform link, and that should have went in the chat as well. So should be out there right now. And if not, I'm sure it'll go back in the chat again. We have been analyzing codes and identifying benchmarks for this project already. And then for any of the services without benchmarks, we're creating benchmarks with input from providers, creating assumptions based on best practices and national trends. So throughout this project, engagement with interested parties will occur, and why additional sessions or additional information may be required as we continue through this process. So with that being said, we're going to start on the next pieces, which is the questions and trying to get any feedback or information that you guys feel would be helpful for us to know as we continue throughout this project and kind of really get started looking at the rates. So I will put the next question up, and then I will go back to the code so we can look at those quickly. And just to refresh everybody to see if there's any specific codes you want to talk about too. So the first question that we have is, and well, before I say that, if you would like to answer a question, you can raise your hand, come off mute. You can also put things in the chat as well. Or like I said, you can also email us at, at some point or even after this call. So several ways for you to communicate, but that being said, we'll start with our first question. What concerns do you have about this rate determination process that you would like the team to be aware of regarding personal support services? And I'll give everybody just a minute to kind of think. And we have several people on the call. So thank you for joining. And this could be questions or concerns. We're happy to answer questions or try to help get answers to questions if need be, if we don't know it right now. So any concerns or questions that you may have about this rate determination process? I think Susan, let me go over here to my chat. So we have a question that came in through the chat, and it says, if rates are finalized in April, when would new rates go into effect? What's the approximate timeline? And I would turn that over to the main team to kind of answer once we would give them the report, walk through everything in April, maybe on their side if they want to talk about that.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Susan. That has not been determined yet. Once we get further along in the process and start to identify the rates and present them, we'll have a better idea on an implementation timeline. But as of right now, that is undetermined.
Thank you. We have another person. Do I see Jillian?
Yeah, Jillian Jolliker. I submitted my feedback I have to do both sections, but I finished 96. But my feedback was just that the rules really haven't caught up with the work that we do as PSS agencies, and just to make sure. I don't know what your process is going to be. I know usually you promulgate the rules, they're proposed, they go out to feedback, but I appreciate when the feedback is asked before, so the rules, are in draft form, and then because once you guys post them, we can't give the feedback and it's kind of too late for us. It's just articulating that the rules, I sent them rules from 1996 that had never been revised in policy, and it's really specific around supervision and the burden of supervision and how it's not really covered by rates. And then we just got licensed, so just that cost now. So like articulating the changes we need to policies so it will align with the proper rates, just noting the PSS agency policies really haven't been updated with like agency feedback. So like one I submitted on the front end is, there's this belief that you start supervision at the start of care, and it's not accurate. And it's something like ODES is evaluated year after year after year, and agencies have gotten huge deficiencies. And then this year I noticed they pulled that back, and then I emailed MaineCare, and the policy writer said, well, my interpretation is you're right, Jill, you shouldn't be doing an on-site supervision at the start of care. So just making sure that those rules are reflective of the work we're doing before you set a rate to it. Otherwise, the rate won't reflect the real policy. Do you know what I mean? Especially in the area of supervision. It's just the rules have been interpreted differently by ODES and by MaineCare historically, and they're not reflective of what agencies are doing or what is real out in the field.
Yeah, thanks for the comments, Jillian. I think specific to the rulemaking and catching up to those requirements that you're speaking of, I think that's separate and distinct from the rate determination, but definitely heard and received in terms of the process to get those implemented via rule, for clarity for providers. But definitely interested in some of the feedback that you have regarding the actual components and parts of the reimbursement structure that are of concern to you.
I thought I saw Matthew had his hand up, and I don't know if he went somewhere or if that
Hi,
was a mistake.
hi, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to acknowledge and share my appreciation for all the folks and all the time that goes into this process. Before I say anything, I just wanted to acknowledge that and share our thanks for all the effort and time that goes into this process. I really appreciate what Ms. Joliker said in her remarks. I'm from Anwell Health Partners. I'm the Vice President of Medical and Community Services. And I just wanted to chime in when the timing makes sense for us to share feedback on the evolving supervision requirements. I definitely would like to share some feedback, concern, and thoughts. Just wanted to confirm if is now the time you'd like that feedback, or is that later on in the session?
Yeah, I think, thank you, Matthew. I think in so much that it relates to the structure, the reimbursement structure, we'd love to hear it now. If there are other items specifically relating to those supervision requirements that aren't directly tied to reimbursement, we can give you a contact specifically in our policy unit to reach out to discuss things that are not reimbursement related. But yeah, at any point in time during this forum, please feel free to voice those rate specific concerns or items.
Yeah, so I'd welcome colleagues. Notice there are quite a few folks in attendance. I'd welcome colleagues to after I share to chime in and share your thoughts and how supervisions work for your groups. But from the Anwell perspective, we have a pretty large population of people we care for across the state. I would say 95% of the clients we care for are MaineCare clients. And looking at the evolving supervision requirements, I just wanted to say formally that it is very challenging, I would say, without the evolving requirements, to do what I would say is the right thing and caring for all people and providing amazing quality and access with the current rates. But the increased frequency of the on-site supervisions happening this year, I just wanted to express direct concern with that increase without an increased opportunity for billing for these visits. I think supervisions by themselves, as is, are challenging to complete while maintaining financial viability with them not being billable. But this increased frequency, it really, I mean, we have, I would say, some scale that maybe many smaller groups don't have, and it is still, it puts us in a really tricky spot. These not being billable, and I imagine that for smaller groups, it's even it puts them in an even worse position. So I just wanted to say, very clearly in a formal way, we are concerned with that increased frequency without appropriate reimbursement for these supervisions.
Matthew, can I ask a couple of clarifying kind of questions? Being kind of the outsider looking in too. So what I'm hearing is that the supervision requirements have increased, and what is required. And with that being said, the payment or reimbursement opportunities are lagging behind or not there. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so supervisions currently aren't reimbursable. It's just something that we are required to do to ensure top tier quality services are being delivered to clients. So they haven't been reimbursable, and we're over the next year. I can't remember the exact time frame, but over the next year we'll need to increase that frequency. I would say more directly, it's not that it's a little behind. There isn't any reimbursement unless I wildly misinterpreted the written licensing documents. Those aren't reimbursable visits. So that's, every 30 days, staff have to go out in the field and do these without reimbursement. So does that make sense? So
Yes.
that's deeply concerning to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we have a lot of different individuals on the call. And that's why I also want to clarify for our team specifically too, make sure that we're understanding that. So thank you for that clarification. I also see another hand up, and I also see the chat is going. So I will come back to the chat just momentarily. Matthew, is there anything else that you want to kind of raise regarding this?
The supervision.
Yeah, the supervision.
I don't think anything else specifically. I think, I guess I think the logic around increasing supervisions for new caregivers, the logic makes sense. I think our position at Anwell is we're hoping we can do the right thing and add a reimbursement to that supervision. And I just worry if there isn't a reimbursement added, that this will negatively impact access to these very needed services for people and families throughout the state of Maine.
Noted. I certainly hear that as well. It's, a cost of doing business, but it sounds like it's a cost of doing business that's increased significantly, it sounds like right now. Veronica, I see you have your hand up. I don't know if you want
Yes.
to add to this, if that's part of the conversation or comments that you would like to add.
Well, it was kind of to go beyond the supervisions, but I see that people in the chat have already kind of tied into that. I was just going to add about the new requirements for the yearly education, and I am a very small business. One challenge that we're finding is how do we financially get education to all of our workers who are spanned over, we have the internet, but a lot of these trainings and stuff, we're either going to have to pay to create or, take time to create these trainings or subscribe to something to do some yearly education. Like it is a cost of business. However, it is a new requirement that, in addition to all of the other things that are cost of business already, the labor department requires us to pay our employees anytime they are working. So we now have to try and figure out how we can supervise people doing trainings outside of an office space. I mean, I'm not speaking for everybody, but for myself, I can't have 85 employees coming in at different times. That would just, so because they all work, some of them work 3 hours away from my office. So I'm going to have to try and figure out that yearly education, and to be able to feasibly do that, it's just going to be an added cost. Didn't know if education is being considered in the new rate determination, besides just services that are provided for the client. So that was kind of my comment and concern about rate determination.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much for adding to what Matthew's already said, and certainly some of the chat information, which we will go back to. I promise those that are putting stuff in the chat, we will go back to it, as well as raising another kind of area. So sounds like supervision has increased and is not reimbursable or billable at this point, as well as education requirements have changed and increased, and those are not billable either, or any, doesn't look like there's anything to do or get reimbursed for that. And there's a cost associated with that. And I certainly hear that. I will say from our perspective quickly, we do look at a whole variety of different aspects and pieces. So like if there's travel or, administrative costs, things like that go into this. So these are very helpful things for our team at Public Consulting Group to really know and hear, because that is something we will take with us when we start really looking into the reimbursement methodology for the specific codes for personal support services. So definitely hear that with the supervision and the education piece. So we will definitely, like I said, as our team will look into that and bring that forward. So let me go back to the chat. Jillian, I know if you want to come off mute, if there's anything, I'm going to kind of read yours. And if you want to add any color to that or any further information, happy to hear that. So make sure our team understands. Supervision is unfunded, which I know we had just quickly, or we just talked about with Matthew. Expansive training requirements. Victoria just brought that up as well. Anything that you would like to add for those two things outside of what we've just discussed or what they provided?
So it's in addition to the expansive new licensing requirements, there are already existing requirements that many agencies might not even be complying with, like the HCBS compliance of the development of the service plan on hire and annually. In 2023, there were more expansive trainings released that were required of Section 19, and I'm not sure the majority of agencies are even doing them yet. So just some sort of, it was, the ODES requirement of the HCBS trainings of person-centered, all of those types of things aren't currently in our rate structure, and they're a requirement of our plans. But noting that none of anything we do outside of that PSS visit is billable for us. So it's trainings, it's the supervision, it's the on-hire personal support specialist course, it's developing your employee. So anything above and beyond in trainings or anything you require in the rule or ODES requires or licensing requires, those are totally we can't bill for them outside the visit. So we're looking at some sort of reimbursement for the supervisory, and I don't mean just the supervisories. I mean the role that the supervisors play in delivering this care, needs to be compensable. So if you are saying we've got to go out to the house once a year and update the service plan, which the rules say, we need to be paid for that, because that's not part of the billing the PSS is doing. And if the PSS is required to be there, we need to be able to bill for that. So the rules are getting more strict of making sure the PSS is there. That's a lot of work for our supervisor to schedule their whole schedule around making sure PSSs are there. So if you think of an agency that has 500 clients and 120 employees, and just catching the employee at one of those visits while they're in their schedule, it requires a lot of administrative time to kind of maneuver it. And I just don't think that that's been kind of well thought out in the reimbursement part. So to me, the policy and the reimbursement absolutely do tie hand in hand, because if the policies aren't catching up with the rate, then the rate is not going to be enough for us to do your policy work. If that makes sense. It's just, there's been a lot added to our plates in the last couple of years. And again, I appreciate you guys added PSS to this review because it wasn't part of it originally. And I appreciate that our rate structure needs to be permanent, because we never have gotten a rate based on a rate review. It's been emergency rate setting from other agencies closing. So I just want to note that policy needs to align with rates, and all that work we do needs to be compensated, because there's, I have 4 supervisors on staff to supervise these employees, and none of it is billable.
Okay. Totally understand. I will say it makes more sense now what you were saying about, the policies need to align with the reimbursement. So that's definitely more explainable now as everybody on the call is starting to talk about some of these different things. So thank you very much for identifying that as well and further explaining how that is impacting financially with the policies. Okay. Susan. So I think, and I'll read this out as well. So under new licensing rules, we have gone from 1 supervision at hire and then up to 3, up to every 3 months. It is now monthly times the first 3 months plus up to every 3 months, depending on the payer. Also required to obtain signatures from client after a review with each service plan update. May occur annually or more frequently, which most likely will also require a visit. Those service plan updates may not coincide with scheduled supervision, so could add on 2 to 3 more visits per year per client.
Yeah, so that's, I'm sorry, this is Susan. So that's a lot of information, but essentially under the new PSS home care licensing rules, which apply no matter who the payer source is, there's now requirements that there need to be, for us, it equates to 4 visits because we do our initial visit with the PSS before they ever start working. Then you need to do day 30, 60, and 90. So that's really 4 visits for us at least. And those all need to be on site in person. Previously, we were doing 1 visit. Now we're needing to do 4 in-person on-site visits. And then depending on who the payer is, some of the payers, private payers may not have any ongoing supervisory, maybe they do. It depends on the payer. Some of our MaineCare programs require supervision every 6 months. Some require supervision quarterly. And so that's kind of what the other 4 times a year supervisory visits entail. The other thing that came out of the new licensing is a requirement, and we've gone back to get clarification on this. The clarification that we got indicates that we do in fact need to get a client signature every time that the treatment plan changes. And so for the MaineCare funded clients, their treatment plan, their service plan, if you want to call it that, is dictated by Maximus. When that RN assessor goes out, assesses the client, they list all of the tasks that are required for the client. We've looked at the Maximus assessments. It does not appear that they do obtain a client signature, and so that has been shifted over to us. If a client has a new Maximus assessment, we get an updated authorization. We are now required to go to the client home to review the service plan. Even though we didn't create the service plan, Maximus created the service plan. We have to review it with the client. We have to obtain a signature. The thing to keep in mind is that throughout a year, most of these authorizations for Maximus are good for 12 months, and then a new assessment is conducted. However, those treatment plans or service plans can change pretty frequently during the year. Sometimes we're having tasks removed. Sometimes we find that a client is not independent in bathing and we're needing to have a task added. The way that the language reads in the new licensing, every time that service plan changes requires a review with the client and a signature. Many of our clients are not going to be capable of electronic signatures. If I try to email them something that's secured, they're not going to be able to get into it. It is in fact going to require someone going to their home, reviewing that service plan, the change in the service plan, even though it may just be one minor task that's been added or deleted. That could have us potentially going to a client home 3, 4, 5, 10 times a year. And those visits, when the treatment plan changes, may or may not coincide with the worker's 3-month supervision visit. So those are just some of the things that are kind of going through my mind. Is this has the potential, just knowing what I know about our service plans, they're not once a year and done. There are almost always certain small changes throughout a year with tasks added or deleted.
That's very
So,
helpful
I want to
information.
jump in here real quick. So typically, and I just want to kind of discuss how we typically approach rate models. Through this process, I mean, we're going to look at billable hours versus non-billable time. We're going to look at productivity adjustments. Those are normal pieces of rate determinations when we're looking at rate studies and developing models. There's also going to be a comment period if you feel that something is wrong or that we missed something or that something's not reflective. We're going to have the ability to have you submit comments to that explaining what deficiencies you see or issues you see with the rate model. And then we can make changes after that based on those comments too. So I just want to let you know that I'm hearing you on what you're saying as far as the supervision, the time, the management time. That is not reimbursed and increased licensing burden. I don't think we need to wait for the, a rule update for that. I think if that's currently what you're experiencing, then that's what we're currently going to focus the rate model on, is on the current rule. So, I mean, if those, we'll address those issues as best we can through this rate determination process when we're looking at the rate model. And I'll pass it back over to you, Rhonda.
I actually, if it's okay, Rhonda, I'd just like
Yeah.
to jump in and add on to what Dwayne said. It's very helpful to receive this feedback. And if there are other areas that you all are experiencing, these kind of pain points in as well, other than the supervision, that's important information for us to have up front. And it would be helpful to also send that via comments to that mailbox that Rhonda mentioned early on, recognizing that, we only have a certain amount of time in the forum. Everybody might not be able to articulate those pain points. So please definitely feel free to use the chat and that mailbox going forward as well.
Thank you. Thank you both. And thank you for everybody for speaking up as well as identifying things in the chat. I think that's really important, again, for our team. Like I said, we do look at a whole comprehensive list of just different things. And when we look at the rates and the codes and before we start making recommendations, and as Dwayne said, there will be opportunities in the future as well to provide additional feedback or, maybe some suggestions, or maybe we did miss something. So, but again, thank you everybody for identifying the things that you've already brought up. This is very helpful. And with that being said, we're going to go to the next question. I know Emma did put the email in the comment again, or the chat, so it's kind of up there. And with that being said, we're going to go to the next question. Are there specific codes or rates for this rate determination process where you think changes need to occur for personal support services, and why? And I apologize, I'm going to flip back through to the codes so you guys can see those. But we're looking for any specific codes or rates that you guys think might need to be changed. Jillian, go ahead.
I've never, in all of my years, understood the intent of a PSS supervisit. I know what the rule says, but as a home care provider for 30 years, it just doesn't make sense to me that it's even a part of the section unless it comes from some federal requirement. I have no idea why there's a PCA supervisit that exists, for an hour by itself for just personal care. It just doesn't even make sense into the delivery of care. But what I would like you to consider is a possibility of a rate under a quality-based care model of like a behavioral health home has of how do I want to say it? Kristen's nodding her head, but there's a word for it. Like I would love to see a delivery model where you're considering quality care and less units and tasks and check the boxes and like for years I've envisioned a capitated payment per month per member based on their needs and based on quality, and less punitive of you didn't check this one box these 4 days and we'd like to take that money back. More you delivered a great job of care on this person, kept them out of the hospital with your great care. A quality-based incentive type payment, I would love to see at some point for this model. I know it might not be immediate, but less on the tasks and the check boxes and more about holistic whole person care and just achieving care and not so much did you bathe them, did you transfer them. I don't know if that makes sense for other people, but more of like a quality care model and a payment per month per member based on where they fall, say in a chart of their care needs, something.
So you're looking for a value-based payment model alternative.
Yes,
Right.
would
That
love
has some kind
that. Yeah,
some kind of quality care measure, additional reimbursement, which usually is based on a withhold. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
it's almost like the behavioral health home. Like we have to
Yep.
meet these quality measures, and it used to be kind of punitive in the front, right? But then it was, if you meet these measures, you'll get this much more instead of holding something back from us. Because it's supposed to be quality based, but I don't know how you do that. But it's something we would love to try at some point. But again, I never understood that super visit, where it came from or its point, and quite frankly, nobody at my agency understands it. Even people that have been there 30 years, it doesn't quite make sense.
Very helpful information as well regarding the codes, and certainly also looking at a payment model and a methodology, which is one of the things that we do look at with this. So anybody else would like to add anything regarding any specific codes or rates that you feel like need to be changed, and why? We have someone that just posted something in the chat, so I will go ahead and read this for everybody. When billing electronically times 12 upload, I have clients with some days 2 to 3 shifts a day. I was wondering what the code would be for the 837p upload to pay for multiple visits in one day. That might be something that's a great question that we might need to look into a little further. So then we can get that response back to you, Jeanette, to make sure that we're giving you the correct information. And I would definitely want to look at these a little bit further and certainly talk with the main team to make sure we're giving you the right information. So if you, Jeanette, if you would send that information to the email, then what I will do, I'm responsible for that, so I will respond back to that. And then we'll try to get you an answer. Okay? And then Matthew, wanted to say thank you to Wayne, Kristen, and team for providing an opportunity to share feedback. Thank you for hearing us on our concerns on non-billable supervision time and support management expenses that aren't reimbursed or covered by the current hourly PSS reimbursement. Thank you, Matthew, for acknowledging that. I think we've got a couple projects, me personally, in the state of Maine, and certainly one of the things about everybody that works in the state at the state level that I've had interaction with in some of these projects, they've been very supportive. So, and certainly open. So thank you for addressing and acknowledging that. Anything else? Jillian, you have your hand up. Is there something else you want to add? Okay. All right. Any other codes or any other things regarding codes or specific rates? Well, we will go on to the next question. Again, I apologize. I'm going to flip through screens really quick. So the next question is, are there gaps in existing payment methodologies for this rate determination process to highlight for the team for personal support services? Jillian, I think you've already identified one opportunity, is that per member per month kind of payment model with, that value-based purchasing kind of structure and methodology and format. Is there anything else anybody would like to add that's on the call regarding any current or gaps in existing payment methodologies, or maybe opportunities or something else you would like to highlight for our team? Matthew, go ahead.
I tried to do the more passive hand raise to not steal the airtime.
It's okay.
So another thing that we have to be very creative about at Anwell in carrying out our mission and serving clients the same way with the same quality, regardless of where they live in the state. Um, Geographies that are very rural and removed, where we're not able to get established solid density within a certain area, minimizing the ratio of non-billable to billable time. That really puts a strain on us financially. We continue to serve markets that are underserved and vulnerable and very rural, even in some scenarios where we have, a single client that's um, considerably is very far from other clients, leading to a lot of travel. We continue to do that because we think it's the right thing, and we want people to get the service they deserve. And we see other groups pulling out of some rural pockets because um, it's so hard to provide great care in these markets and still be viable with the current reimbursement. So an idea, and I don't, perhaps this is something that is being discussed or considered already, but some kind of add-on for clients that live in a geography that is more rural. So it allows I don't know, I just saw the 5-minute warning, so I want to keep my time short, but I guess some add-on for client service that's occurring in more rural markets, I think could be of value, thinking about equitable access long-term and viability for the programs that are serving those clients.
Certainly noted. And fun fact, we were actually in Maine last week, some of our PCG team. So certainly got to see the layout because we drove around to some different facilities for another project. So certainly noted, and something that we have absolutely heard. And that is, like, again, something that we can certainly take into account and try to identify here as well. So thank you for identifying that. Anybody else like to add anything further in with the gaps, the existing payment methodologies? Jillian, I see you did put a comment. Prior rate models had visit minimums and different payments, but were never implemented. Took into account costs with different visits. I assume like different visit types and maybe with
So like
travel.
it was like a 1 to 2 hour visit. If it was a 2 to 4 hour visit, I can't remember, it was part of Burns' rate model, but it never got implemented. But there was different visit rate structures because your cost goes up when the visit's smaller because there's more traveling and there's more administrative work and burden. And just going back and looking at that, it never got implemented. They did it in 2015 and we thought it was getting implemented, and then something kind of happened, and then the pandemic happened. But just re-looking at that, we were all pretty sure, like you got more money for the shorter visit, less money for the bigger visit. If it was an 8-hour visit, you got less than the 2 before. And it was like a sliding scale based on, because your cost is different based on each of those things. And it took that into account, but a straight hourly doesn't do that.
Okay. Certainly noted. Thank you for providing that context as well. And then Jeanette has just posted something else in the chat. Staying in state policy rules, labor board mandates, travel time be paid. So yes, we are paying per hour from client to client at rate paid to the PSS. The travel time is not reimbursable or paid. Okay. Jeanette, certainly hear you on that. And as I had mentioned before, we certainly will take these things into account when trying to develop that rate model, and then taking that to the state and certainly talking about, why we have created this rate model or why the rates are where they're at and some of those things. So at the end of all this, you will be able to see how those things would be accounted for as well. So based on what the state would determine they're going to do and how that would be modeled out. You'll be able to see some of those things in the report. With that being said, I would like to go to the next question. However, if there's something that anybody would like to provide feedback still on any of these questions that we've already mentioned, please feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand. We can certainly go back if need be, as well as you can use the email. So let me go to the next because we're close on time and I want to be cognizant of that for everybody. What do you think is most valuable for our team to know regarding personal support services for this rate determination process? And I'll give you a prime example. One of the previous meetings, it was very clear, and some of the things that we were told was it needs to be very clear that case management and care coordination are two different things. So there might be something like that that you guys would like for our team to know, or maybe something else. But just as an example, wanted to provide that out there. Matthew, go ahead.
I'm just like hoping I'll raise my hand and others will speak before me. I will share though. So I want to say something that may sound kind of simple, but also I think it's pretty impactful. When we look at fast food chains starting salaries, there are PSSs that have been PSSs for decades, caring for the state's arguably the most vulnerable, challenged populations. And they are making more, they could make more, in some cases, significantly more, working in fast food restaurants. And it's just really, it's really sad. And I've seen really amazing caregivers. I've seen them need to make choices for their families to make more money, and they leave a career of service to a fast food job to make more. And I share that. I'm personally optimistic and hopeful with this rate setting process that we'll be able to do the right thing collaboratively to preserve access, equitable access across the state of Maine for these populations. I'm hopeful and optimistic that we'll be able to make changes needed to retain enough compassionate, caring, loving caregivers to provide Maine people the care and support they deserve.
Certainly hear that. And COVID has really also changed a lot of things in our world, right? And salary being one thing. So certainly hear that. I think that's a great point to bring up as well. Julian and Jeanette, I think I see you both identifying and agreeing that this is an important point, as well as longevity is in our reimbursement, and most are within $1 of each other, starting with compared to a 30-year employee. So certainly hear that. I think that's a great point to bring up about valuable for our team to be aware of. One other question with that quickly, is it causing issues with recruitment?
I would say recruitment, I would say retention. I mean, national average for home care is home care pulse last year was 80% annual turnover for this population. I'm not sure the exact Maine average for last year, but yeah, I think I don't have all the data off the top of my head to share, but I do think the rates negatively impact our ability to recruit and retain people to preserve adequate access.
And I'm seeing a lot of people post in the chat. Thank you guys very much. I certainly see yes, yes, absolutely. And then Jillian, I think you put in here about 64% for the, kind of turnover and some of that. So thank you guys very much for that. Again, I think it's just really valuable for our team to understand, to deliver this type of care, some of that challenge, which equates also to a financial aspect as well. So, okay. Anything else that anybody on the call would like to add? Okay. If not, I'm going to go to the next question, which is our final question. And so I know we're like 3 minutes over, but I'm okay. If you guys are okay, we'll get through this last question. And again, remind everybody that you certainly are please email us if you have other information. And if you need to drop off, I see, a couple of people do, please feel free. And then you could view the last piece or segment. So, and then Emma just put the dedicated email in the chat as well. So the last question, is there any information regarding personal support services, delivery, payments, and or codes that you would like to share that we've not talked about yet? Certainly have heard travel, pay, recruitment difficulties, geography. Certainly understand from this project as well as other ones, definitely a difference between North and South Maine, and traveling and things like that too. So geography. Anything else or any other information that you guys would like to provide to us?
I don't know. I don't have services, and I know there are towns or cities in Maine that have mandates for minimum wage. It doesn't apply to me because I can't go to those towns because of it. But I know Susan probably deals with it. I think Portland has their own minimum wage, and it's hard to service those areas because the MaineCare rates only apply to the areas that don't have those minimums. So I don't even know if you can do those types of things, but special consideration when certain cities or towns impose their own restrictions, that the costs in those are higher. So a lot of employers tend to avoid those because MaineCare doesn't pay for those types of rates. I don't know if Susan's still here, but I feel like she's had to kind of deal with those things.
This is Susan White.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Sorry, I am still here.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yes, Portland does have its own minimum wage. At times, it's mostly in line with the state. It goes up every January. Oftentimes, it's higher than the state minimum wage. And I know that there's another town, I think it's Rockland, but I'm not 100% sure. But there's at least one other city in the state of Maine that has its own town minimum wage. There were a couple of years where the Portland minimum wage was at least $1.50 more. And I'd have to pull it up and take a look to see where it is exactly in relationship to the state minimum wage currently. The other thing that impacts Portland businesses, so this rule applies specifically to any business that's their office is located in Portland, and it applies to anyone who works in Portland for a company who's based in Portland. So other agencies outside that are not based in Portland, they don't have these same minimum wage requirements that we have being based in Portland. Again, I think Rockland, there may be another town or city within the state that also has special minimum wages. I know there's been a few that have considered it and have discussed it. Whether they passed it, I'm not sure. The other thing is currently Portland also has its own emergency rate. So time and a half, anytime that there's a state of emergency. Currently, that state of emergency is in Maine. So if Maine declares a state of emergency, they did a year ago, there was a certain state of emergency, time and a half has to be paid, whether it impacts Portland or not. So that's the caveat.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
so
that is something definitely we have not heard in some of our other sessions. And I am thrilled that you brought that up because certainly providing personal support services, whether there's a state of emergency or not, a lot of times the care has to go on. So those are things I think that's very important that you have just identified for us and our team.
And An
pushing that.
example was I think it was this spring, there was some pretty substantial flooding in certain central Maine counties, such as Somerset County, for an example. Didn't impact Portland at all, but because the state of Maine called a state of emergency for certain areas, it triggered that requirement that we pay workers time and a half, and it went on for, it was probably about a 2-week period. We had 2 or 3 storms that were back to back. State of Maine had one emergency after another, and we ended up having to compensate all of our Portland workers time and a half for that full period.
That is very helpful information, I think, for our team. So thank you so much. We will certainly make sure that those things are identified too, as we continue through this rate process. Is there anything else that anybody would like to add or identify for additional information?
The only thing I put in the chat is, again, I have to stay away from these areas, and I'm just being honest, is, you know, there are times that like members live on, say, Verona Island, and you've got to take a ferry to get there. So there's a lot of things that aren't part of our rate reimbursement structure. So agencies tend to have to stay away from those, or you have to be there to do it. So just consideration, like on the coast, everybody knows in the summer in certain towns, it's going to take you twice as long to travel routes to get to your member's house because of construction or because of tourism. Just those types of considerations that a lot of agencies will stay away from those areas because the costs are significantly higher and it's not part of the structure. And we've always advocated for, and I know it's hard to set different rates, but maybe if you look at it regionalized, because Maine is so big, right? And a lot of it is country and some of it is coastal, and it's all different what you deal with. But like Susan was speaking to, even in Portland, just traveling around the city streets takes you forever, and it would be different from the care I deliver in Benton, Maine, because you're not going to spend an hour trying to find a parking spot to get to your client's house, or just those types of thoughts of like places that require parking and parking garage. Like the amount of time between visits is considerably higher than like what I would be dealing with here in central Maine. But it's the reason our agency has kind of stayed out of Portland, and we're not like big on the coast, just because the administrative cost is significant and it's time that you're not compensated for within your rate.
Those are very, very good points. And especially when you're providing personal care services, usually you are there for 4, 6, 8 hours, you know what I mean, for a shift. It might have additional services thereafter as well. So I certainly hear you on that, and what you're identifying as, again, some additional challenges, as well as a opportunity, or not an opportunity, I should say, for people to provide care sometimes, and maybe that's impacting quality or people to access the service.
And like she was talking about parking, and say you got to jump on the interstate, you have additional tolls. There's all these different things that go into trying to figure out what area you can and can't service. And it's just, you know, it's part of our current delivery model. But like she was talking about a fine, you know, cars getting towed in the city, the things are so much more costly. So it kind of should be looked at that way, that it's not like New York and it's like a big, I don't know, because I know New York has country too, but it's just looking at the different parts of Maine and the cost associated with living or servicing those different parts of Maine, that I think that rates should always have been based off that, if it's possible.
Yeah, there's a lot of logistics, right?
Yes.
And so this is perfect. And again, why we're doing some of these sessions is because we want to hear from the providers, boots on the ground, the information, or maybe the challenges or opportunities or things that you guys are feeling. And you know, we certainly understand there is a financial impact with all these different pieces and parts that you're identifying logistically. So, you know, that's exactly why we're having these calls. And I am very appreciative of you guys speaking up and providing the information to our team, so we can make sure that, you know, we understand and trying to develop a rate model and actually look at that.
I do just want to also add, just briefly before we turn it over to Matthew, that as PCG mentioned before, they are also going to be sending out surveys to your organizations to capture some additional information about time spent on certain activities and things like that. So I think all of this is very helpful to capture there as well. So please, let folks within your organization that will be filling out those surveys know to include those types of items and information in the surveys that are returned to us.
Very good point, Kristen. And then one other thing, Matthew, before I just want to make sure we address Susan in the chat. She has identified that they are turning away clients in downtown Portland due to parking fees. Cars must be moved every 2 hours. Just had a caregiver who missed the 2-hour deadline by 5 minutes and had to pay a $40 fine. And then parking passes that enable caregivers to routinely park are costing $125 per month per caregiver if you do go that route. Very good context.
And this is happening in senior living. So for an example, we have numerous clients. We have a handful that are on State Street. State Street at this point will not give our caregivers passes. They charge $125 per parking spot per month, which we can purchase a parking spot. That would be, what we would need to do. Outside of that, it's street parking, and anyone who's from the Portland area knows that currently is a really bad situation where all businesses are being impacted by this. Cars literally have to move parking spots every 2 hours or they get a fine. So our caregivers who are in a home for 4 hours are having to run out, move a car, and they have to actually move their car to a whole nother parking location. They have them numbered and it has to basically be moved a block. So it doesn't work for our service model. We don't have, obviously, the finances to be paying parking fines, nor having caregivers run out and move their car every 2 hours. So we have caregivers who are just refusing to work in the area. And it's definitely impacting patient care in downtown Portland. Other areas of Portland are fine, but that downtown area with the parking situation is really difficult to staff.
Sure. Again, thank you, Susan, for providing that context as well and giving us, again, further insight, and some of the financial challenges as well that ultimately you guys would see based on how the service is delivered in what geographical region. Matthew.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Ms. Jolliker said. These clients who are harder to serve, so maybe that's caused by how rural the region is that they live in, or intense traffic, seasonal traffic, or maybe it's a small allotment of hours per shift, whatever the driver is. We have all kinds of for-profit personal care and companionship groups that are launching service within the state, and they're accepting, some are just accepting cash pay only. And so there's intense competition for cash pay clients, long-term care insurance clients, and these hard to serve clients. It's the result, I guess, without us addressing the reimbursement models, whether it's the travel or rurality adjustment or a higher hourly PSS rate. We could approach this in a handful of different ways, but if we don't address the current gaps in reimbursement for these people, the result is reduced access for these people and families. And so Anwell, we have a broad portfolio of services and are starting to enter into value-based care capitation space in a handful of them. And I guess that my final comment is that if these clients aren't receiving the care they're eligible for in the home, these clients will, and the access isn't appropriate for their needs, and we're not able to serve them appropriately in the home, they'll need to seek higher levels of, more complex, higher acuity care.
Which is
and
more costly.
Yeah, so I guess my seed plan, I guess, begging, pleading, for the broader system. I mean, it's not just for the caregiver agencies, but appropriate rate setting allows us to reduce total cost of care for MaineCare across all settings, when we aggregate all the different settings and services. So again, I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that with these platforms, the listening, the collaboration, we will be able to successfully improve the rates. I have to be honest, it really worries me if we aren't able to. We're going to continue to see decreases in access and quality, and it breaks my heart personally. And I really hope we're able to make some adjustments for the people of Maine.
Certainly hear that as well. Sometimes if in an area one is not going well, care is not accessible, people have to find other avenues. And that creates bottlenecks and as well as increase in costs and some of those things too. So as well as a whole host of other things. Certainly hear you on that. Thank you for identifying that as well. Anything else, anybody? I know we're over, but appreciate everybody staying on the call. This has been super helpful, very beneficial, for our team. And as we're going through this, anything else that we would like to add or? All right, if nothing else, like I said, email, please email that email inbox if you think of something later, or if there's something you wanted to say and didn't have an opportunity, or, something like that, please feel free to reach out. I will respond and get back to individuals or certainly note what you have submitted if there's a comment or something. So the next slide is the email, Maine HCBS SC&N at pcgus.com. It's also in the chat as well. Please feel free to use that. Again, I just want to tell this group thank you, and everybody that has provided information. I think this has been super helpful for our team to hear those challenges and what's kind of happening and how it's related to your payment methodologies and as we go through this payment methodology rate determined process. So thank you very much. Look forward to us providing other opportunities. Like I said, the survey may have other opportunities for forums as this project goes on. Get on the email listserv if you're not, so you can get notified for any of those future opportunities. We'd love to have you guys back again, and we'll connect with you guys, I'm sure, sometime again before April 2025. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Let us know if there's anything you would like to provide us with or questions we can answer after the call. Thank you. Bye-bye.